Painting gouache is still such a struggle for me, so I was really hesitant to film a process video like this, considering I've definitely not mastered this magical medium yet. But I thought to myself, because I'm still a little bit early in the learning curve and I'm probably battling exactly the same beginner gouache demons that you might be battling, I thought maybe this is like the perfect time to film a video like this. I come from a watercolor background, meaning it's quite similar to gouache. They're very related, but they're also kind of the opposite in the way they work. So it's been really stretching my brain. I have been going out and painting gouache for about 2 years now, and things have been clicking. I actually really love the medium. I love the range of values you can get, the mood that you can get that are really hard to achieve with just watercolors. So it's definitely worth dipping your toes into this medium. It can become such a source of joy. So it's summertime here in Germany. There's all these flowers blooming and these beautiful hibiscus flowers outside of my house have been really catching my eye. So a few mornings back, I took the time in the morning light to try and capture their beauty. I right off the bat was aware that this is going to be a very challenging subject to paint with gouache. The green foliage and stuff, that will work kind of okay, but as maybe you know, gouache dries very strange. Often, especially the light colors, tend to dry a lot darker than you expect. So when they're still wet, they look light, they look perfect, and yeah, once they dry, it turns out way darker, which is kind of the opposite problem that you would face with watercolors. So painting white hibiscus flowers is a challenging subject to choose. That has been the main issue that people tend to have, including me. Achieving these vibrant lights in gouache, especially whites, without having it all look all chalky. Still have some hue variation in the white and light areas of your painting. So this will be kind of the challenge in this painting. Okay, like as you can tell, I've been sketching here in the background. I'm using a blue color-raised pencil. Some people prefer to use gouache right off the bat for their sketch. Other people use graphite, but I've been liking this blue colored color-raised pencil. I feel like it looks nice under the paint. It doesn't shine through. And the first color I will reach for when getting into gouache, once I'm happy with my loose little sketch, is the white. I'm starting with the lightest light that I can see, which obviously is a light white of the flowers, just because my brush is still clean and my water is still clean and my palette is still clean. It's just the perfect time for me to start with some perfect whites. I'm mixing a little bit of yellow in there here and there, but I'm really staying in the super light area. Like, I put colors down that look like they're gonna be way too light, because in the end they'll dry, hopefully the perfect color if they feel too light. Like these blues that I'm dropping in, I'm already nervous. They look great now, but once they'll dry, I already know they're gonna dry way darker than I anticipated. So I am just fighting to stay light here. Coming from a watercolor background, I'm used to working light to dark. So I've been dropping in not just some whites, but also some of these cools that I've been seeing. There's some purples, there's some blues in the white. I even see some greens, which, you know, it makes sense considering that this is a white flower in shade and they will reflect what's around them. And right now that is all the green foliage. So I'm also trying to pop in some greenish colors here and there, using a lot of water here in the beginning. Still, I'm trying to not water the gouache down. That was a mistake I did in the beginning as well, that I just used so much water that I was basically turning my gouache into watercolors again. I'm trying to stay away from that now and still using thick, bold paint. Using a lot of water, it helps me create some beautiful bleeds later for when I go into the magenta. Here I'm using some ulcerine crimson and just some reds and mix that to a nice magenta, and they will bleed nicely in these wet whites that I dropped in, as you can tell. I'm using a very big brush, a very bold brush, But here I'm trying to really just put tiny little dots of color in, just so that it bleeds and kind of has this playful look to it that I like in watercolor, that I'm still struggling to achieve in gouache. And now I'm leaving my whites as they are, my flowers, and I'm getting into the bold shapes of the foliage around. So I'm sure you've heard this many times before, when painting it's always a good idea to not start with too many details, and I tried to do that here. I tried to use big colored shapes rather than thinking too much of the color and the details of the leaves here. But I am being very careful around the edges of the flowers. I can't always paint light over dark later, but I don't trust that much yet. So I'm really just carving out my flowers here carefully, just in case my white won't be able to cover up these dark greens. And yeah, I'm having the values in mind a little bit when dropping in the green backdrop and the temperature, which that is something that gouache is really good at. You can get the cools of the foliage, the warms of the foliage in pretty detailed, which is also something I've struggled with watercolors. So I got some greens and some ochres in here, but also some blue-green here and there. I'm also adding in a little bit of white, just because a lot of the greens, when you look at a leaf, they tend to have a lot of gray-green on it. So just using perfect vibrant greens sometimes looks a little bit unrealistic. And that is something gouache is also really good at. I just need to be careful to not use in too much white, because too much white will just make it look chalky. I don't know if you saw here, I also dropped in a little bit of red in my blue-green. That, I don't know, I figured that out with watercolors as well. I feel like dropping in a little bit of red, not too much, makes the green also look more naturalistic and less artificial. Kind of browns it down a little bit and adds a warmth to it as well, without, having to like reach to black. So I'm squinting here while painting, really trying to look more at the shapes of the flowers and less of the details of every single leaf and stuff. I'm trying to keep that in mind. And having a big brush here is really helpful. I intended to later switch to a smaller, more detailed brush, and I'm glad I didn't. Every time I am forced to use a brush that's slightly too big, I am forced to think in bold shapes as well and make more bold decisions and be more courageous. And it ends up forcing me to focus on what's really important. So just carving out some leaves here in the background, carving out some more blossoms, and just alternating between cool greens mixed with the reddish colors, and ochre greens. And of course the grayish greens with a little bit of white mixed into them as well that I mentioned. So this is just an olive green, blues, and whites. I'm adding also some crimson, some more darker crimson and ulcerine here now that the colors have dried. I'm trying to keep the playful bleeds and stuff, but just adding a little bit of darker drops of red here and there to indicate the shading, because there's light passing through the red and there's darker parts in the blossoms as well. And here I am adding some white spots and grayish leaves in the background. The white spots are some dappled light on the background of the bamboo that were kind of shining through, but I'm really just indicating that I want the focus to be the flowers and not the background. Here I am starting to add in another layer of white, and the shade layer of white. So I'm again being really careful to not go too dark, but I did notice, especially now that the sun kept creeping in, I thought the flowers were completely covered in the whitest white, but then the sun started shining on it and I realized that there's even lighter highlights. So now I am draping all my flowers in a layer of gentle blue-greenish shading here and there, and leaving just a few spots of white, of the perfect white that I mixed earlier, for the highlights. This is something I used to be too scared to do, but if I don't let myself be bold and carve out the leaf blossoms and the actual shade colors that I see, then I'll always, my drawings will always stay on kind of a mediocre level. So I almost always now try to push myself to go the courageous route and cover everything I did in the right value if the values did change. Yeah, dropping some bright spots of green in the background as well. Dropping in some more white shading on the leaves of the final blossom, and again just leaving out the spots of highlight here and there. I'm also dropping in some red, some purple in the white, because white is never really white. Like I said, it reflects, especially if it's in shade like it is here, its surrounding, meaning you can kind of drop in whatever color you want. I'm really taking my time with these just because this is really the star of my painting. I'm also being careful to not lose and overpaint the beautiful, playful red bleeds that I dropped in earlier, because I really like the way those turned out. Okay, we are moving from our lightest lights to our darkest darks. So at this point I'm actually being bold and actually putting some blacks in my colors, which I try to put off for as long as possible, but in gouache, blacks don't really gray it down like they do in watercolors. I allow myself to use a little bit of black in my greens to really get those darks in that gouache is so good at, and I'm placing them conveniently around the flower that I want to focus on. I'm also painting what I see, trying to get the values right that I actually see in the foliage, but I'm also keeping in mind this one flower. Now I took a break from my little painting. That always helps, just washing my palette, cleaning my brushes, pretending like I'm starting over, getting myself a cool drink, just not looking at my painting for a while. That kind of resets my beginner's mind, and now I come back and I can really kind of see, are the values correct? How is the whole painting looking? What if I were to start this with a fresh mind? And yeah, I came back and felt the need to unify some more of the shading on the blossoms. Like I said, the biggest issue on this painting is the whites, and that's what I'm just gonna keep focusing with. Right now I'm trying to get a little bit more hue variation in there. I'm guessing adding some more warmth was what I needed, and I also wished for these shaded areas to be a little darker than they did end up drying. So I'm trying to darken them, add some more hue variation, while also trying to keep the looseness and not lose all the work I've done previously. Like, this is the third layer of flower colors that we're doing, and the more you layer, the more playfulness you lose. Yeah, and then switching back and forth between painting the flowers and painting the highlights on the background here and there. I'm trying to not get the background too distracted, but I did feel like there could be some more green variation in the background. So here, adding some shadows on the bamboos, unifying the shadows in the leaf colors and stuff. Just noodling back and forth in the background. Here, added some more blacks and reds in the green to give me a warm dark green as opposed to all the cool dark green that I saw, because the sunlight piercing through this foliage, it's a warm day, it's a summer day, so these little caves of foliage that you see, they end up looking kind of warm a lot of the times. So I'm glad I added some more warm and cool greens in the background and the shading. And yeah, as you can see, just keep adding darks over darks because they keep drying lighter than I expected, and that way you add some depth in your painting and you're just going back and forth, carving out some leaves every here and there, while trying to keep it balanced to keep it interesting but not more interesting than my little flowers. Adding some shading on the little center part of the blossom here as well, that was still missing, and another layer of shading on the shaded part of the flowers. It's hard to comment on this stage of the painting because I'm not going in a chronological order. I feel like some painters might do that, but for me, this is really just going back and forth between details and unifying, and from the darks to the lights to here I'm going darker again, then I'm going back to the light areas of the flowers. It's really just me thinking that I'm done, taking a step back and be like, no, it still needs this one detail, and then usually I keep doing that for like, yeah, another like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or something. This noodle stage can go on forever, and it's a skill in itself to know when to stop myself. I feel like in this painting specifically, I might have gone a little bit too long, but it's also kind of a fun part. You're just turning your brain off, and you just constantly asking yourself, what does it still need for this to feel finished? So I'm just noodling and doodling away on this one. Here I'm adding some drop shadows of the flowers, some more darker darks and stuff. And yeah, I'm noticing that layering lights over lights, that kind of grays it down and stuff. And I think that's what happened with the flowers. But adding darks over darks in the green foliage, I feel like that always looks good. So as I finish up just carving out the last couple of shapes and values of the flowers here, I'm realizing that one of the things that always happens when I'm trying to learn a new medium is I immediately want to master it, and I also just want it to look effortless and light. But obviously, learning a new medium, struggling to understand it, it'll never look as effortless as the masters that I'm looking up to. But that's the beauty of it too. We're learning a new thing, and there definitely are things that I like about this drawing that I really would have been so proud of a couple years ago. In the end, if I just let myself noodle for a little bit longer, I really like the level of detail, and I really like the mood that these have. And in general, I feel like this captured this beautiful summer morning, even though it's by no means perfect. I hope just watching this helped other people that feel confused about gouache painting. I find that for me, just watching someone else's approach, just watching someone else think and feel himself through the painting really helps me understand and grasp the medium a little bit better. So maybe this gave you some inspiration as well. I really hope so. But yeah, I'll end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you want me to share any more gouache time lapses and stuff, or if there's any questions that you have. And yeah, if you watched until this very end, thank you so much, and good luck with painting.